God's chosen ones, sexual desire is the battlefield within you. And you didn't find this video by accident. You were led here, not by an algorithm, but by divine guidance. Because what you're feeling, what you're wrestling with in silence, is something only the chosen will understand. If that's you, then stop scrolling. Stay. This is your confirmation. Have you ever felt like your own body was betraying your spirit? That while your heart longs to draw closer to God, your desires try to pull you into the very places you swore you'd never go again? If so, type 777 in the comments right now, because you're not alone. You are one of God's chosen ones, and your greatest battlefield may not be outside of you. It's within. To everyone who has already supported us with a super thanks from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Your gift is not just financial, it's spiritual fuel that helps spread truth to others who feel isolated in this very same war. May God bless you for your generosity. But let me ask you something piercing. Why do the purest souls often face the most impure temptations? Why is it that those with a divine assignment seem to battle the darkest urges? Have you noticed that the closer you get to God, the more intense the struggle becomes? This is not random. It's not shame. It's not failure. This is a sign. What if your greatest weakness was actually the clue to your highest calling? What if this inner battle over your desires is not a curse, but evidence that heaven has already marked you for something sacred? Because when you carry light, darkness tries to corrupt you, not after your victory, but before it. The enemy always attacks the chosen before the anointing flows. Right now, you might feel like something invisible is trying to block your growth, your breakthrough, your peace. And maybe you've mistaken this silence from God as abandonment. But beloved, God's silence is never absence, it's preparation. Do you remember Joseph locked away in Egypt? Or Daniel surrounded by Babylonian culture? Or Jesus fasting in the wilderness, facing temptation face to face with the enemy? They weren't being punished. They were being purified. And you, yes, you, are in the same divine process. So before we go any further, I invite you to reflect and share. Have you ever felt like your deepest struggle is happening in secret, that your mind and body are pulling you in opposite directions and no one understands why? If yes, comment. This struggle is real, but I am a chosen one. Because when we share our pain, we become a shield for someone else's soul. Now, let's go deeper into this holy mystery. Let's uncover the truth no one is talking about. Why sexual desire isn't just a temptation. It's a sign that your temple is being contended for in the spirit. And what feels like shame may actually be your sacred awakening. God's chosen ones, sexual desire, is the battlefield within you. Have you noticed that the moment you try to consecrate yourself, when you choose purity over indulgence, when you finally begin to separate yourself from the noise of the world, suddenly the intensity of temptation surges like never before? The closer you draw to God, the louder the cry of your flesh becomes. This inner war isn't random, and it certainly isn't a sign of failure. What if this battle is actually confirmation that you carry something sacred? That you're not just being tempted, you're being targeted. You, God's chosen one, are not ordinary. Your body is not simply flesh and bone. It is a spiritual vessel, a divine channel, created to carry heavenly assignments on earth. This is the mystery few are bold enough to speak aloud. Your body was never just yours. It was marked from the womb, designed to transmit spiritual frequencies, to carry divine codes and access realms others cannot perceive. Both the kingdom of light and the forces of darkness recognize you, even when you don't fully recognize yourself. And that recognition is why you're under such attack. In the book of Jeremiah, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, and before you were born I consecrated you." Jeremiah 1:5. That wasn't said to flatter, it was a declaration of function and destiny. Could it be that your urges, the ones that seem foreign to your true identity, are actually distortions of your deeper spiritual sensitivity? What if the desires pulling at your soul aren't merely physical, but energetic, signals of your body being caught between the divine and the diabolical? You were never called to be just another body in the crowd. Samson's strength was not in his muscles, but in his consecration. The moment his vow was broken, his power was disrupted. The enemy knew he couldn't stop Samson physically, so he sent Delilah to compromise his channel. And that is precisely what happens to you. The enemy sends emotional distractions, seductive spirits, false intimacy, not because you are weak, but because your body was created to be an altar, not a battlefield. In the modern world, the late Pope John Paul II, a spiritual giant known for his theology of the body, once said, "The body, in fact, and it alone is capable of making visible what is invisible, the spiritual and the divine." This truth reflects why you feel spiritual interference through your very senses, because your biology is connected to your calling. Your body was built to reflect what is holy, and the moment it begins to radiate divine alignment, the enemy scrambles to defile it. Think about it. Why would Satan waste his efforts on those already lost in the world? He reserves his greatest arsenal for those who carry something rare. And if your body has become a battleground of desires, confusion and shame, perhaps it's because it was meant to be a sacred ground. The greater the destiny, the greater the resistance. Isn't it strange how some of your deepest struggles don't even make sense to you? How something within you is always pulling towards something more, something higher. Take a moment to reflect on Mary Magdalene, a woman plagued by 7 demons, yet chosen to be the first witness of the resurrection. The enemy targeted her because he saw her potential before she even understood it. Do you ever feel like part of you is misunderstood even by yourself? That your impulses don't align with your heart? That contradiction may be the evidence of your consecration. And in our times, painter and survivor Frida Kahlo once confessed, "I am in pain and I draw myself again and again. I am both wounded and sacred." She wasn't a theologian, but her life spoke a spiritual truth. The body that suffers often hides the soul that was set apart. You, too, may be wrestling with sensations, urges and desires that seem to betray who you are, but in reality, they reveal your sensitivity to the invisible. The enemy's strategy is simple. If he cannot destroy you, he will try to dirty what God has declared holy. He wants to distort your desires, corrupt the channel, delay the outpouring. But what he cannot stop is the fact that you were chosen before you even knew how to walk. That divine mark on your life cannot be removed by temptation. It can only be delayed if misunderstood. So the next time your skin seems to react to something invisible, or your soul feels like it's sensing a presence beyond this world, know this: it's not madness, it's not weakness, it's the echo of your calling. And that calling is too sacred to be silenced. And now we arrive at a deeper truth, the second reason for the intense struggle you face. Your sexuality as God's chosen one is a strategic battlefield, not just a battlefield of flesh, but one of identity, destiny, and spiritual alignment. To fully understand this, you must approach it with spiritual maturity. Sexual desire in itself is not evil, it is not shameful, it is not a stain on your purity. God himself designed it with purpose and power. It is a sacred energy, a force capable of uniting souls, birthing life, and even mirroring divine intimacy. But because of its sacred potential, it is also one of the easiest forces to distort. And distortion is the enemy's favorite tool. Throughout the Bible, some of the most powerful and anointed individuals faced their greatest tests in the area of sexual desire. Samson, anointed from birth with supernatural strength, was deceived not by an army, but by a woman. David, a man after God's own heart, fell into sin not on the battlefield, but from his palace rooftop. Solomon, the wisest man in history, had his heart turned by women and foreign gods. And Joseph, though he resisted, was tested fiercely in the house of Potiphar. Why were their battles so intense? Because where there is great power, the testing will come with equal force. Have you ever asked yourself why your struggles seem so heightened? Why a single image, a fleeting thought, or a buried memory can set off a chain of desire within you? This is not random, it's spiritual. Your soul, chosen by God, is like fertile soil. Everything enters with intensity. You don't just see images, you feel them. You don't just remember, you relive. You don't just desire, you ache. That emotional depth is not a flaw. It is a sign that you were built to carry something sacred. But the enemy knows how to twist this gift. He understands that sensuality is one of the most subtle yet powerful chains he can use. It creeps in through the senses, seeps into the mind, hijacks the imagination, and slowly entangles the soul. And with God's chosen ones, it becomes even more dangerous, because once you confuse desire with identity, you begin to lose sight of your divine reflection. Yet, here's what the enemy won't tell you. The very ones who are attacked with the most intensity also possess the deepest capacity to rise. Your resilience, your spiritual strength, your ability to overcome is as great as the warfare you face. That's why your sexuality is not merely a physical matter. It is tied directly to your consecration, your intimacy with God, and your spiritual authority. If the enemy can muddy your purity, he delays your access. If he can stir confusion, he destabilizes your faith. St. Augustine, one of the most influential Christian thinkers, once confessed in his Confessions, "Lord, make me chaste, but not yet." Before he became a saint, he wrestled deeply with lust and identity. His honesty echoes the tension that many chosen ones feel, the pull of desire versus the longing for holiness. And yet, Augustine's story proves that even the most intense struggle can become a testimony of transformation. Even in our modern world, speaker and author Joshua Harris, who once wrote extensively about purity and later deconstructed his faith, reminds us through his journey that unresolved inner conflict about sexuality can reshape entire belief systems. His public wrestling, regardless of the outcome, reveals how spiritual authority can be shaken if identity is built on confusion rather than clarity. You see, a body ruled by unchecked impulses will always carry guilt, and guilt eats away at the roots of faith. It doesn't just tempt you to fall, it convinces you that you are unworthy to stand. That's how identity becomes blurred. But a body that is understood as a temple, as a vessel that houses the divine, becomes more than protected. It becomes powerful. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." This is more than a warning, it is a revelation. Your body is not a prison for desire. It is a portal of healing, a sanctuary of power, and a lighthouse of liberation for others. This is why the attack on your sexuality is not just about getting you to sin. The real aim is confusion about who you are, what you carry, and where you're going. If the enemy can distort the vessel, he can delay the outpouring. But when you begin to see yourself through the eyes of the Spirit, everything changes. You're no longer driven by guilt, but by grace. No longer overwhelmed by desire, but aligned with purpose. And now the question rises, what would happen if you reclaimed your body as sacred ground? If you chose to understand your sensitivity not as a weakness, but as a divine radar tuned to heaven's frequencies? What kind of power could be unlocked? Not just for yourself, but for those you're called to lead. And now we arrive at the third reason, a truth often felt deeply but rarely spoken aloud. Your spiritual sensitivity, as one of God's chosen ones, amplifies everything. You don't just feel, you absorb. You don't simply think, you dwell. The world doesn't pass by you like a blur. You notice the pauses, the glances, the shifts in the room that others dismiss. You live in emotional depth, not surface reaction. When you love, you give your entire soul. When you're wounded, the ache echoes in your spirit long after the moment has passed. And when temptation arises, it feels as if something invisible is pulling at your being. Not just physically, but energetically. That isn't your imagination. It's the mark of your sensitivity. And sensitivity, though it often feels like a burden, is one of the most sacred gifts you carry. Your energetic system is more open than most. This means your spiritual antenna is constantly scanning, receiving, absorbing, whether it's the intentions of others, spiritual atmospheres, emotional undercurrents, or unseen presences. And yes, this includes the realm of sexuality. For you, a simple touch can stir an entire memory. A passing glance can ignite a storm of inner response. A single word, even unspoken, can cling to your spirit for days. Has that ever happened to you? Where something small seemed to trigger a flood of feelings that felt out of proportion, yet so real. This doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are spiritually tuned. And this tuning, when left unattended, can become overwhelming. If your sensitivity is neglected, it morphs into anxiety. If suppressed, it evolves into guilt. If misdirected, it can lead to dependency or even addiction. But when understood and cultivated, that very same sensitivity becomes power. Spiritual power, prophetic vision, healing touch, and divine awareness. Look through the scriptures. The prophets, the seers, the dreamers, those closest to God, were often the most sensitive. Elijah wept under a broom tree. Jonah wrestled with God's mercy. Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet. Their depth of emotion wasn't a flaw. It was the vessel through which God's voice was delivered. Have you ever wondered why your emotions feel more like waves than ripples? Could it be that your soul, like theirs, was crafted to carry divine impressions? This intensity you feel, especially in the area of sexual desire, is not meant to shame you. It's a sacred force that, when redirected, becomes creativity, intercession, spiritual intimacy, and healing energy. In the hands of the world, desire is exploited. In the hands of God, desire becomes transformation. Renowned psychologist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl once wrote, "What is to give light must endure burning." His words weren't just about surviving suffering, they were about purpose. The ones who feel deeply are often the ones called to illuminate the path for others. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's a divine assignment. But like fire, it must be stewarded, not feared. That's why speaking openly about this is essential. No more pretending, no more carrying silent shame. Many of the battles you fought in secret were never about weakness. They were the birth pains of your awakening. You weren't losing control. You were being prepared. You were being trained to navigate a world that your spirit was always too awake to ignore. Yes, desire can become a trap if misunderstood, but it can also become your greatest tool for self-mastery, inner elevation, and mature authority. When you learn to channel it, your desire fuels divine creativity. It pushes your prayers into deeper groans. It turns your tears into intercession. Have you ever transformed a broken longing into a moment of worship? That's not imagination, that's spiritual alchemy. Now, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you fought silent battles in this area, feeling everything, yet having no one who understood what was happening inside you? If that's your story, I invite you to write in the comments, "My pain has a spiritual root." You are not alone. There is a growing community of awakened souls like you, God's chosen, who are finally understanding what's really happening within. And if this message is speaking to you, take a moment to like the video. This simple act tells YouTube that there are others like you, still in the shadows, who need this truth. And subscribe, because this is not just a channel, it's a place where pain finds a voice, where spiritual warriors find their direction, where the chosen ones rediscover the truth of who they are, one revelation at a time. Have you ever noticed that the moments when your soul aches most for connection are the very moments you feel the most alone? That the nights are quietest just before the desire grows loudest? That the early morning hours, when everything around you feels still and lifeless, are often the times when your deepest longings awaken with full force? This isn't by chance. There is a spiritual strategy behind this pattern, one so ancient and cunning that it repeats itself across generations of God's chosen ones. This is the fourth reason for your silent war: isolation. Not just physical distance, but emotional and spiritual separation. A kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being away from people, but from feeling unknown, unseen, misunderstood, even in a crowded room. This kind of isolation is a time-tested tactic of darkness to weaken those who are marked for a higher calling. Why? Because isolation breeds emptiness, and an empty heart begins to crave anything that promises to soothe it. The enemy knows this. He understands the architecture of human longing. An isolated heart becomes soft soil for the seeds of distraction, temptation, and even self-destruction. Pleasure, especially sexual pleasure, becomes the quickest fix to that ache. It's not about lust at first, it's about relief. But that brief comfort is a lie that comes with a cost. After the pleasure, guilt walks in. Shame follows quietly behind. Regret creeps into your prayers, and soon the very presence of God feels far away. This cycle of escape and emptiness repeats, and each time it does, the isolation deepens. It's not loud, it's not violent, it's subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. Can you relate to that spiral where one lonely moment leads to a decision you never planned to make? This isn't a weakness unique to you. This is the pattern of those who carry power. Look at the scriptures. Moses was taken from the palace into the wilderness, not by chance but by divine design. Elijah fled to the cave, overwhelmed by fear and exhaustion. John the Baptist lived alone in the desert, clothed in camel's hair, his only company the wild. And even Jesus, the Son of God, faced 40 days of temptation in solitude, hungry and alone. What do they all share? Isolation came before anointing. But here's the danger. When the chosen one doesn't understand the purpose of this divine separation, they begin to try to fill the silence with anything available. And that's when pleasure, especially sexual desire, offers itself as an escape, not as love, not as intimacy, not as connection, but as a distraction from pain. It promises peace, but it often delivers chains. Have you ever found yourself seeking warmth in the cold night of your soul, not because you desired sin, but because you desired to be held, understood, seen? That desire is not wrong, but the direction it takes can either lead you into captivity or into communion with God. This is not a simple test of willpower or moral discipline. It is not merely about resisting urges. It is a war between two natures, between the soul that longs to be soothed and the spirit that calls you into sanctification. Paul described this so vividly in Romans 7:22 through 23. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin. This war is not new, but neither is the victory. Even in modern times, this war rages in hearts that appear strong. Henry Nouwen, a Catholic priest, theologian, and author whose writings touched millions, confessed in his journals about the loneliness and inner ache he faced, especially in seasons of silence. He once wrote, "When we keep listening to the voice that calls us the beloved, we will know that we are intimately loved and do not need to prove our worth." His transparency reveals a truth we often hide, that even the most devoted servants of God can battle against the need to feel emotionally filled, and that need, when misunderstood, can lead us into seeking substitutes for divine intimacy. That is why understanding this battle is crucial, not just resisting it, but interpreting it, recognizing that your isolation may be part of your preparation, not your punishment. Recognizing that your longing might not be a flaw, but a signal that your spirit is ready for deeper intimacy with God, not a counterfeit substitute. So next time the night feels unbearably silent, when the ache grows and you find yourself reaching for relief, remember, this is not just weakness. It is your calling being tested, and your sensitivity, your desire, your longing. They are not burdens to carry in shame, but signs of your divine wiring. This fight you face, it's not about perfection, it's about revelation. It's about rising with understanding, not shame. It's about knowing that the loneliness you feel is not a death sentence, but the sacred silence before your spirit awakens. And now we reach the fifth reason, a truth as ancient as it is alive within you right now. There is a war raging between your spirit and your flesh, not a symbolic war, a real, daily, exhausting war, one that leaves you torn between who you are and who you are becoming, between the divine light you carry and the human nature you still inhabit. The Apostle Paul gave voice to this war in Romans 7:19 with stunning honesty. "For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing." That's not just a line in Scripture. That is the inner dialogue of the chosen one. That is your conflict, isn't it? You long to please God. You desire to live in holiness, to be a vessel of light, to be a channel of grace, a walking sanctuary of His presence. And yet beneath that desire, there is another cry, a very human cry. A part of you that aches, that longs for closeness, for touch, for intimacy, that wants not just to serve God, but also to feel loved, seen, and held in the body you were given. This struggle doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're alive. Only the living wrestle with holiness. Only those being sanctified feel the pull. The spiritually numb feel no conflict because they've already surrendered to the flow of the flesh. But you are being transformed. You are being shaped from within. And transformation always brings friction. That's why this inner tension is not proof of your distance from God. It is a sign of His nearness. The pressure you feel, the internal unrest, the fluctuation of your emotions, that is the cost of being awakened. It's the holy discomfort of having your spirit pull one way while your flesh pulls another. Have you felt this lately? The pull to surrender everything, side by side with the pull to indulge in temporary comfort. That clash is not punishment, it's preparation. Think of Jacob, who wrestled all night with the angel of the Lord. He limped afterward, but he walked away renamed Israel, the one who struggles with God and overcomes. You too are in that same struggle, and just like Jacob, you are not coming out of this empty-handed. Something inside you is being renamed. The enemy, meanwhile, sees this. He doesn't waste energy on those who are already on the ground. He attacks those who are rising. He targets those who are remembering their identity. That's why your temptations have intensified, not because you're losing, but because you're waking up. You're aligning with your calling. And when your spirit begins to rise, the spiritual realm begins to tremble. That's why everything around you suddenly seems louder, Your flesh screams, your thoughts race, your soul groans. But in the center of this noise, a sacred path is being carved out. A path not of punishment, but of elevation. A path of surrender that doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. A path that looks like sacrifice but leads to empowerment. Saint Teresa of Avila, a mystic and reformer of the Church, once wrote, "The soul's desire for God is a fire that burns away all that is not Him." That's what you're feeling, not failure, but fire, and fire transforms. In this moment, what if your weakness wasn't an obstacle, but an invitation? What if your battle is not about resisting yourself, but rediscovering your divine design through it? You are not fighting against desire. You are learning how to refine it, not to extinguish your humanity, but to raise it into alignment with heaven's rhythm. That's why renunciation is not a rejection of who you are. It's the unlocking of who you really are. And though the world will never understand the quiet wars you fight, the spiritual realm sees it all. Every time you choose surrender over impulse, every time you cry out instead of giving in, you are walking the path of the chosen. So, if you've been feeling overwhelmed by this war lately, know this: it's because something is being forged inside you. A fire that is not here to destroy you, but to awaken you. Your elevation is near. Your spirit is being honed. And the one who called you is still whispering, even in the heat of battle. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. And now we arrive at the sixth reason, one that has been hidden in plain sight, yet holds extraordinary power. Your purity is a spiritual weapon, not just a moral choice or a set of behavioral guidelines, but a force, a weapon forged in the realm of light, deadly to the enemy's agenda. In today's world, where everything is exposed, sexualized, and consumed like fast food for the soul, choosing purity isn't just rare, it's revolutionary. You live in a generation saturated with stimulation. Pleasure is marketed as instant. Identity is reduced to desire, and restraint is seen as weakness. But you, God's chosen one, were not called to fit in with this world. You were called to pierce it. And when you choose purity, authentic, conscious purity, you ignite a war in the spiritual realm. You become a threat, not because you are perfect, but because you are awake. Let's be clear, this isn't about repression or shame. It's not about pretending you have no desire or walking around with hollow self-denial. It's about clarity of purpose, control over your temple, and a living connection with the one who formed you. Every time you say no to the temptation that nearly crushed you, you are not just surviving, you are ascending. Every prayer you whisper through clenched teeth and trembling flesh sends out a frequency that hell cannot stand. Each private surrender becomes a public declaration in the unseen realm, and every painful renunciation, it builds an altar, a secret place where God places a new portion of His Spirit within you. Think about Daniel. In Babylon, a land overflowing with temptation and spiritual compromise, he chose purity, not just in body, but in heart and worship. And it was this inner discipline that gave him access to visions, revelations, and angelic encounters. Could it be that the resistance you feel in your flesh is not just a struggle, but an invitation, an opening into spiritual realms that are unlocked only by those who dare to remain clean in a contaminated world? Purity is not the absence of desire, it is the presence of purpose. It is seeing your body not as a burden, but as a channel, a sacred conduit through which God's light flows. As Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body." This is not religious instruction, it's divine reality. And when you begin to live in that awareness, you don't just manage temptation, you dismantle it. You don't just wrestle with the enemy, you become someone the enemy fears. A chosen one who knows their value, aligns with their assignment, and governs their impulses is unstoppable. You don't just carry the light, you radiate it. In our own times, St. John Paul II, known for his profound theology of the body, spoke often about how the body reveals the spiritual mystery of God's love. He said, "Only the chaste man and the chaste woman are capable of true love." This wasn't about restriction, it was about elevation. He understood that purity unlocks not just moral clarity, but spiritual intimacy. That kind of love, rooted in sacrifice and reverence, becomes divine strength. Have you ever felt that after resisting something, though it exhausted you, your spirit grew sharper? Have you ever noticed that after a moment of surrender, something sacred was deposited in your soul? A deeper peace, a clearer sense of identity, a surge of spiritual authority. That's because purity is not about the absence of struggle. It's about choosing alignment with God in the middle of it. Every time you resist what the world calls freedom and choose instead what God calls holy, you expand your spiritual capacity. You move from defense to offense, and the enemy knows this. That's why he targets your purity so violently, not because it's your weakness, but because it's your power. You were not made to be ruled by urges. You were made to carry glory. And when you live in purity, you're not just guarding yourself, you're preparing yourself for greater authority, deeper encounters, and higher elevation. Purity opens portals. Purity protects purpose, and purity brings God's presence closer. So the next time you feel that familiar tug, the temptation to give in, to numb the ache, to silence the loneliness, remember this. The battle isn't just over your body, it's over your future, it's over your calling. And the choice you make isn't small, it's sacred. But let's be honest, this process is not easy. It's holy, yes. It's transformational, yes. But it is also painful, lonely, and messy. You will fall more than once. There will be nights when you stare at the ceiling, tears rolling quietly down your face, wondering if you've disappointed God too deeply this time. You will feel weak, even broken, and yet, in that moment of trembling sorrow, heaven does not turn away. God does not leave you. Why? Because He never chose you for your perfection. He chose you for your willingness. He looked into the deepest places of your being and saw something unshakable, a heart that would rise again after falling, a soul that could endure the refining fire of the desert, a warrior that even bruised and tear-stained would say, "Lord, I'm still yours." That's why you were chosen, not because you always get it right, but because you're not afraid to return when you get it wrong. Every time you overcome an impulse, every time you silence a voice of temptation or choose surrender over escape, you're not simply practicing self-control. You are fighting for eternity. You are building altars in the spirit realm. You are honoring your calling, and with each battle, you are rewriting the story of your destiny. You may feel like you're barely hanging on, but in truth, you are winning. Victory is not the absence of struggle. It's the presence of faith through the struggle. It's whispering, "God, I still belong to you," even when your body aches, even when your soul doubts, even when desire screams. That kind of worship, birthed in the battlefield, is more powerful than 1,000 songs sung in comfort. It shakes the gates of hell. Maybe you're there now, watching in silence with your heart heavy. Maybe you're carrying shame over something recent, a slip, a memory you couldn't shake, a decision that pulled you off course. And inside, a voice has been screaming, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I overcome this? Why am I still like this?" But what if the answer isn't that you are weak? What if it's that your calling is that strong, that the force of the temptation you face is evidence of the power of your purpose? Look at Jesus, sinless, perfect, divine. And yet He too was led into the wilderness, tempted in body and soul. Why? Because he was about to unlock heaven's authority on earth. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. Hebrews 4:15 says, "But we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." The temptation was part of the path, and for you it is no different. Only those with extraordinary assignments face temptations in the most intimate, vulnerable areas. The enemy doesn't waste his best weapons on the indifferent. He unleashes them on the set apart, on you. The pain you carry in secret, the ache you don't know how to name, is not ordinary pain. It is sacred. It is the friction of transformation. It is the weight of becoming. And few will understand it, because few are called like you are. You're not crazy. You're not lost. You're under construction. And every real construction brings disruption before beauty. Before God can build something glorious, he clears out the debris. And when God begins to shape a chosen one, the first step is always separation, pulling you away from the familiar, the comfortable, the destructive. Then comes the cleansing, and cleansing touches everything. Your memories, your desires, your impulses, your relationships, even the unspoken habits you thought no one saw. This is the holy discomfort of being prepared. The fire that purifies, not punishes. Have you ever wondered why your journey feels more intense than others? Why your desires feel heavier, your emotions more explosive, your solitude more profound? Could it be that you're not being broken down, but being set apart for something no one around you has ever carried before? Even the sculptor, before revealing the form hidden in the marble, must first strike the stone. And you, beloved of God, are being shaped by the hands of a master artist who sees what others cannot yet see in you. Sometimes the fiercest temptation doesn't come from outside, it rises from within. It isn't always a trap set in your environment. It's a whisper that echoes from the hidden corners of your soul, a desire that doesn't make sense, a sudden impulse that feels out of character, a dream so sensual you wake up confused, ashamed, or even afraid. And in those moments you ask, where is this coming from? But the answer may not be what you expect. It might not be you, it might be a wound. Some of the deepest temptations are not born from rebellion, but from brokenness, a fracture in your spirit that formed long ago, when you were still too young to name what was happening, a trauma you buried, a moment of exposure your heart wasn't ready for, a loss, a silence where love should have been. These cracks became entry points, and now the enemy tries to plant confusion in that soil, hoping you'll mistake pain for desire. But here's the truth. God sees what the world doesn't, and what heaven sees, heaven heals. That private battle you're fighting, God is already moving in it. The tears you shed alone in the night, He's collecting them like precious oil. That strange inner war you feel, it's not a sign of filth. It's the doorway to healing, because the very place where temptation screams the loudest is often the exact place where your transformation begins. This is why the fight feels so intense. It's not just because you're vulnerable, it's because you're valuable. There's a part of you now that knows you've been called, set apart, chosen. You've heard the whisper of heaven, you've tasted the presence of God. But there's still another part of you, marked by memory, shaped by past experience, tied to the flesh, that still reacts, still desires, still falls, and then recoils in shame. That's where the anguish comes from, that division inside, like you're constantly disappointing God, even when your heart is desperate to please Him. But hear this, with the full spiritual authority placed on your life. You're not disappointing God. You're being transformed. You're not backsliding. You're being rebuilt. And transformation takes time. Grace holds you where guilt tries to chain you. Do you recognize those uninvited moments? The morning hour when desire surfaces without warning. A memory that ambushes you in stillness. A word, a glance, a video that stirs something too strong to explain. These are not random. These are targeted temptations crafted for specific souls, because your soul is rare, and what is rare is watched closely by heaven and hunted fiercely by hell. Even Jesus, the sinless Son of God, faced tailor-made temptation in the desert. The enemy offered him bread in his hunger, kingdoms in his weakness, and false power during his solitude. Why? Because he was preparing to walk into his purpose. And the same is true for you. The battle you're facing is not a punishment. It's proof that something sacred is forming inside you. In today's world, people like Nick Vujicic, a man born without arms and legs yet full of faith, have testified about battling feelings of inadequacy, temptation, and even suicidal thoughts. But instead of being consumed by them, he learned to offer them to God. He once said, "God's love is so real that he created you to prove it." Like Nick, your story isn't about what you're missing, it's about what you carry. And that's why your attacks are personalized, because your assignment is irreplaceable. What you're feeling is not madness, it's not weakness, it is the pressure that comes before divine positioning. You're not falling apart, you're being aligned for a battle you were born to win. The greatest soldiers of the kingdom face the most intense pressure just before breakthrough. The enemy isn't fighting what you've done, he's terrified of what you're about to become. So take a deep breath. You're not lost, you're awakening, and every time you cry out, "God, I still want you," even with trembling hands and a torn heart, heaven thunders back, "And I still choose you." The enemy isn't responding to your past, he's reacting to your potential. He senses what you're on the edge of unlocking. He knows that you're about to break an ancient chain, a generational yoke that's bound your bloodline for decades. And that's why the pressure intensifies. That's why the attacks suddenly feel personal, relentless, and overwhelming. He wants to stop you right before your next phase begins. But here's the truth that shifts everything. If the battle has increased, it means heaven has already released something new over your life. The spiritual realm is moving, something has been authorized, and hell is scrambling to block what has already been set in motion. Don't misinterpret your struggle as failure. What feels like weakness is actually warfare. Your body is being trained, your soul is being refined. God is not ignoring your fight, he is using it. He's allowing it to forge your identity, to purify you, to teach you mastery over the very thing that once enslaved you. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. Your pain is not the end, it's the beginning of your ministry. You are not a prisoner of your desires. You are a warrior, being shaped in fire. And only those deeply loved by God are cut this way. Only those destined to carry light that confronts darkness are pursued by shadows, this dense. If you've been feeling like the pressure is personal, it is. Because your purpose is personal to heaven. Think of Peter, who denied Christ 3 times, publicly, painfully. But it was this same man whom Jesus entrusted to feed his sheep, to carry his church. Think of Mary Magdalene, tormented by 7 demons, yet chosen to be the first witness of the resurrection. Think of David, who fell hard into sin, yet was still called a man after God's own heart. Their past didn't disqualify them. Their pain became their platform. Could it be that your secret battles are preparing you for a public assignment? And even now, in the quiet places where no one sees, in your bedroom, your car, your morning routine, God sees everything, every swallowed tear, every moment you clenched your fists in prayer instead of giving in. Every time you whispered, "God, help me," instead of surrendering to the storm. These hidden acts of surrender mean more to him than outward displays of perfection. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you, Jesus said in Matthew 6:6. God does not value appearance. He values authenticity. And what is happening in the secret place between you and him is writing the real story of your anointing. Yes, the same story that will one day touch others, even if you don't see it yet. Many of the people you now see preaching, healing, prophesying, they weren't always standing on stages. Many of them began where you are, in the dark, in the desert, thinking they had failed too deeply. But God didn't choose them because they were clean. He cleaned them because they were chosen. And He's doing the same with you. If you're still here, still listening, still searching, still longing to understand why the pain won't ease, that's proof that you're not done. It means you're one of the chosen. It means you've been set apart, not for a life of perfection, but for a life of purpose. And when this desert season ends, you won't walk out the same. You will rise stronger, clearer, and more dangerous to the enemy than ever before. This pain will not be wasted. This struggle is sacred. And you are the vessel God has chosen to purify in secret before revealing in power. You may think you're being punished, but in truth, you're being tested. Not abandoned, but shaped. You are not being rejected. You are being refined. There is a sacred difference between punishment and preparation. The enemy accuses to break you, but God allows pressure to build you. What you're feeling now, the inner fire, the tension between flesh and spirit, the desires that seem to rise out of nowhere, is not a sign that your story is ending. It's a sign that your elevation is beginning. You see, what most people call weakness, heaven sees as raw material for power. This desire you carry, this battle that so few understand, is not just about resisting sin, it's about facing the very mirror of your mission. Could it be that the depth of your temptation reveals the depth of your calling? That the very force trying to consume you is being allowed so that you might be awakened? God allows His chosen ones to walk through pain, not because He wants to see them suffer, but because He is sculpting with precision. Like a master craftsman cutting a diamond, He is removing what dulls you, carving you into a vessel fit for greater glory. Every time you look inward and face your internal war with honesty, not denial, not shame, but clarity, you are being shaped like a rare jewel. And a jewel only shines after friction. This is not symbolic, it is spiritually real. You are walking through a spiritual testing ground. You may not see the movement in the invisible, but the realm of heaven is watching, documenting every choice you make when no one else sees. The small renunciations that feel like death today, those moments when you choose worship over wandering, prayer over pleasure, are not wasted. They are being recorded as acts of war and surrender. And one day what you did in secret will become the very testimony that sets others free. What the enemy designed to destroy you, God is already repurposing to elevate you. This is why your battle feels different, why your struggle seems more intense. Because it is. You are not like the others. You weren't called for ordinary. Your destiny carries a weight that demands uncommon preparation. And where there is an extraordinary calling, there is also an unusual level of testing. Think of Job, whose loss was severe and suffering unimaginable. But God wasn't punishing Job, He was proving him. And in the end, Job didn't just receive restoration, he received double. Think of Joseph, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, imprisoned unjustly. Yet in that crushing, he was being positioned for promotion, to save a nation. Could your current pressure be proof that something much greater is being birthed through you? The desire you feel so deeply, the pull that feels like it might undo you. It's not weakness, it's a signal. You feel desire with such force because you feel everything deeply. Your heart was made to carry burdens others count. Your soul was designed to perceive what others overlook. Even pleasure to you feels like comfort. But God is not building you for comfort. He's building you for kingdom impact. And what He is preparing in you is far greater than momentary relief. He's creating in you a vessel that will carry healing to others, freedom to the captives, clarity to the confused. But first, He is testing you in silence, because only those who are trusted in private can be entrusted in public. So hold on. Even if you feel like you're losing the fight, the fact that you're still fighting means you're already overcoming. What you're enduring right now will not end in shame, it will end in glory. And the very place where you were once tempted will become the ground where others are delivered. God is shaping you, not to shame you, but to set others free through your story. What feels like your greatest weakness now will one day become your greatest weapon of truth. There will come a day when you will speak of your struggle not with fear, but with freedom. You will guide others not with theory, but with authority. You will look back on what once made you bow your head in embarrassment and realize that was the very place God chose to reveal His glory. Your flesh, once a source of turmoil, will become an altar. The very thing that tormented you will become the platform of someone else's deliverance. The pain you feel today will be tomorrow's healing oil, not only for you, but for those God sends your way. Believe this with your whole heart. You are not enduring all of this for nothing. Every tear is watering a divine purpose, and soon that purpose will blossom. The process may feel slow, the cutting is delicate, sometimes excruciating, but it is holy and it is necessary, because chosen ones are not simply sent out, they are formed, and formation doesn't happen in applause or public success. It happens within, in the hidden places, in the closed room where no one hears your cries, in the torn soul where confusion and desire rage silently, in the private moments where your yes to God is whispered through tears and trembling hands. But God sees it all. He sees what others miss, and from those very places He is raising you up, stronger, deeper, and more dangerous to the darkness than ever before. Not because you are flawless, but because you are surrendered. Because even when you stumble, your heart still longs to get up. Because even when you feel guilty, you still cry out, God, help me. And that cry, that desire to return, that's all God needs to keep transforming you. He's not asking for perfection, He's asking for your yes, your consistency, your willingness to keep walking even when it hurts, your decision to stay when it would be easier to give in. This is what separates the chosen from the common. This is what heaven honors. And now, believe this. Your story isn't ending in struggle. It's beginning in glory. What once bound you will no longer define you. It will become your message, your mantle, and your mission. You see, what you're carrying inside you, this fire, this hunger, this restlessness, is not ordinary. It's the sign of someone who's being prepared for divine responsibility. You are not being broken to be discarded. You are being broken to be trusted. God doesn't anoint without first crushing, and He doesn't send without first shaping. You are being trained in private for a purpose that will one day be public. And this is why your spiritual pressure is greater, why your temptations are stronger, why your emotions feel heavier. You're not being ignored, you're being forged. Because when the time comes, and it will come, you will not only rise, you will lead. You will speak into the lives of others who thought they were too broken to be loved, too flawed to be used. And with tears in your eyes and fire in your voice, you will say, I was there. I know this battle, but I didn't die in it. I was reborn in it. Just like Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times and was later entrusted to shepherd his people. Just like Moses, who killed a man and fled, only to be called from the wilderness to confront Pharaoh. Just like Rahab, a woman with a past, who became a woman of destiny in the lineage of Christ. Their pasts didn't disqualify them. Their yielded hearts made them powerful. And you, yes, you, are part of that same story. So don't rush the process. The delay is not denial. The pain is not punishment. This is God forming a vessel that can carry weight. An empty cup might look perfect, but only a poured out one can be filled with glory. Even your waiting is holy. Even your cravings, when surrendered to Him, become the ashes from which worship rises. Even your falls can be stepping stones if you let God turn them into altars. And when the time is right, when He has refined you through the fire, you will rise with a voice that cuts through confusion. You'll lay hands and chains will break. You'll speak, and the oppressed will feel hope. And people will look at you and wonder, how did they become so strong? But they won't know about the private war, the silent tears, the long nights when you whispered, God, I can't do this without you. But heaven will know, because heaven saw it all. This battle has never been just about you. It has always been about what's inside of you, about the generations that will be freed because you didn't give up, about the stories that will be healed because you chose to walk through the fire instead of running from it, about the captives who will find freedom through the very places you once bled. You see, God never wastes pain. He never allows a fight without preparing a crown. The pressure you feel is not crushing you, it is carving you. The longing, the temptation, the silent tears, the aching questions, these are not signs of defeat. They are signs that you are being entrusted with something eternal. You were not chosen to be flawless. You were chosen to be faithful. And your scars, they will not be your shame. They will be your evidence that even when darkness whispered, you kept walking. Even when guilt tried to bury you, you reached for the light. Even when desire tried to deceive you, your spirit whispered, I still belong to God. And that whisper, that quiet, trembling whisper, is what heaven calls strength. So walk boldly now, not as someone who is barely surviving, but as someone who is being prepared to lead. The battle is still real, but so is your calling. And when your time comes, the very things that once tried to destroy you will bow to the authority of the one who was refined in fire. You are the one hell tried to stop. You are the one heaven chose to carry glory. And this sacred war within you was never about your destruction. It was about your becoming. And now that you understand how sacred and purposeful this fight truly is, I want to invite you to do something prophetic. If this message has spoken to your soul, if you felt seen and awakened, write in the comments right now, my fight has purpose. This is more than a comment. It's a declaration, a spiritual affirmation. You are saying, I will not be ashamed of this process. I will not hide in silence anymore. My pain will be the bridge to my destiny. Let heaven witness it. Let hell tremble because of it. And if you're here for the first time, or if you've already been walking this journey silently with us, subscribe to this channel now. This is a home for those who feel too much, who wrestle with unseen battles, who carry invisible callings but eternal assignments. Here, every video is a revelation, every word a healing, every message an awakening. Activate the notification bell, because what's coming next in your journey you don't want to miss. You are not just listening to videos, you are being sharpened. And when your time comes, no one will be able to stop the brilliance of your mission. Because this battle has never been just about you. It has always been about what's inside of you, about the generations you'll impact, about the chains that will break because you chose not to give up. The pain that once broke you will become the healing others never thought possible. God never wastes a wound. He never permits a battle without preparing a victory. You weren't chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because you said yes, again and again, even with shaking hands and a heavy heart. Your scars will not be your shame. They will be your evidence that even in the fire, you kept saying, I still belong to you, God. So don't be afraid of the fire. It's forging your crown. It's refining your voice. It's preparing you to walk in power. You are not losing, you are becoming. You are the one hell tried to silence. But heaven has already spoken your name, and now your time is coming.